work with people and they start levitating and things like that. And I've seen that kind of stuff and I haven't even documented it because some things I thought, it's like you said, it's not as exciting for me personally. I know, like, to be on a visual platform, I did show some things like people being blindfolded and they can still see everything going on in the room. But a lot of it, people bending spoons with their mind, things like that, I never showed. I never shared levitating while they meditate. And it's just because I think that that can become very easily a distraction. And then people are seeking that rather than seeing that as just a symptom of what's really happening.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, ever since this incredible being accepted my invitation. I want to welcome to the podcast Frank Elaridi, a basically an intuitive, a clairvoyant, a healer, a conscious creator. And I'm just impressed at what he's currently doing in the world today. Welcome to the podcast, my dear friend.
Hello, brother. Thank you. I'm honored, really honored. I love your energy already.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It really is, what's that expression that the kids talk about these days? Real, recognize real type of thing. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. It really comes down to that when it comes to this space. So I would love you to just share a little bit with our audience, my audience, a little bit about yourself leading up to this point.
Yeah, so like really quick summary, I was a TV journalist for a little more than a decade, did really well in that world. I won 4 Emmys. I traveled the whole world telling stories. But in my personal life, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I was having dreams that would come true. I was visiting shamans in the jungle. I was, meeting healers in Latin America, all kinds of things. And that's just what I loved to do. It was really my life, aside from having a job, and little by little, I couldn't live in 2 worlds anymore. And I just went fully into the spirituality and started sharing some of it online. That grew really popular, but what's interesting is even talking to you before we started recording is that, you're telling me about your background and, you work with people and they start levitating and things like that. And I've seen that kind of stuff and I haven't even documented it because some things I thought, it's like you said, it's not as exciting for me personally. I know, like, to be on a visual platform, I did show some things like people being blindfolded and they can still see everything going on in the room. But a lot of it, people bending spoons with their mind, things like that, I never showed. I never shared levitating while they meditate. And it's just because I think that that can become very easily a distraction. And then people are seeking that rather than seeing that as just a symptom of what's really happening, and to not get lost in that. So yeah, that's just kind of been my journey. Now I do energy work. I do healings for people. I've been doing that for 3 years. I have like a 4-month wait list. That's all just word of mouth, just people, having experiences, sharing it with other people. So that's the thing that fulfills me the most. When I get a message from somebody and they say, oh, I was doing this thing and now I'm not, or I had this physical ailment and now I don't. Like that's what I get excited about.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It is, having been on this journey consciously for so many decades. It's really profound when you start to realize the true nature of reality. And what that really means is like the present moment. And, from a Taoist perspective, we always talk about that. And we speak very clearly on how simplistic things are. Everything is contracting, expanding at this present moment. Everything is everything and nothing at the same time. And so that when you come to that realization, you're like, okay, man is none of those things. And so a bellows can contract and expand indefinitely. And that's why we talk about the Tao being abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And then man is limited. Man can be exhausted. So it's almost like walking through that gateway of realization that you are not this physical body. And so one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, always says, when you realize you're not of this physical body, what can harm you? Nothing.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is like, there's a teaching that I have been practicing for like 10 years called A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but It's incredible. A Course in Miracles. It's actually right next to me. And all these teachings, like I keep finding them back in this book again. Like I'll go to Hinduism to now Taoism. So you just said, you nothing can happen to you. And like one of the biggest teachings in A Course in Miracles is you are not the body, you're free. You remain still as creation created you, not as this body. So even like forgiveness, people confuse it and they say like, oh, I forgave that person. They did this thing to me, but I'm letting it go. That's not forgiveness. That's grace. Like you have grace. Forgiveness is like, this person never did anything to me. They can't do anything to me. They can do something to my physical body, but I am not the body. So in reality, nothing ever happened. There's nothing to forgive, and it's like, and the book says, God does not forgive because he has not condemned you in the first place. So there's nothing to forgive.
Oh, that's such an incredible realization when it comes to the seeker, when they come to that moment. For Taoism, the stillness is between the breath in and the breath out. Between yin and yang is the stillness, the wu ji we call it, which is access to the mother of all things, the Tao. And so that present moment is when all the magic happens. Past, present, future is now. And it's like accessing that energetic. So between, you and I incredibly experiencing these amplitudes of energetic pulsation through our expansion, because we're expanding through this very moment, we're feeling it. We're feeling the expansion. Any of my students or OGs of the channel, they love me having interviews with people because it's like an experience for the observer, experience for the seeker. When we're having these incredible conversations, they get to enjoy the profiles of all the different energetic potential that's taking place within this merging, this moment. And so I love that it's all coming back, as we put it within Taoism, all the rivers return to the ocean. And, the insight that you're receiving from all your seeking and realizing who you really are. Because for us, it's returning back to who you really are, the knowing, the now, the present moment. And there's nothing more or nothing less. It's now. And you mentioned, so you've been focusing intensely, focusing on energetic healing for the last 3 years. You did mention that you'd had spent 10 years cultivating and doing other things, pursuing your seeking, your knowing. So tell us more about your energetic insight. I've seen some of your interviews and some of your healings that people don't even realize when they get into conversation with you. You're instantly accessing all the profiles and the potential of that individual, and they just open up. It's just this incredible, beautiful experience to witness, to experience. Can you share more with the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, and thank you for seeing that. It's interesting. It is that way, where it's like immediately when I talk to somebody, I can already see what's blocking them, what's not, what needs to be cleared, things like that. But I don't ever interfere unless they ask for it. So sometimes I could just be sitting there listening to someone talk, and in my head, I'm like, oh, it's so easy. We just need to clear this thing. You're never upset for the reason you think. So people might be upset now because their boss did this or that, but really you're upset because when you were 9 years old, you were left in the car or whatever. There's like this programming and this living in the past. Like you said, you're not now, you're not present. And then also the other thing, it's like a big realization I've been having lately is how much of the suffering comes from thinking you are this individual self, rather than seeing yourself as part of the body, as the microbiome of the planet. And, we're all just these different little cells in a body, in one singular consciousness. And so just like, when somebody's negative and we call them, oh, that person's a cancer or whatever it is, it's the same thing in the body. There's like a cancerous cell that needs to be healed and cleared or whatever else. And then you have like the gurus or maybe some of your masters who are on such a high level of consciousness that people start to gravitate toward that cell. And then they start vibrating at a higher level. And then that goes out into the microbiome of the earth, right? So I just see it as like this big one collective thing. So really the biggest thing is to clear my own self. And so I'm always clearing myself. And every single time a client comes to me, it's really interesting. I don't know if you have this or if you experience this, but it'll be like 1 week where every single person I talk to has a misalignment in their pineal gland, or every single person, their heart is closed off, or every single person has unworthiness this week, whatever it is. And I just think, okay, this is something that needs to be cleared within me. That's why it's coming into my awareness. So I'm clearing it for them, but I'm clearing it for me. We're clearing it from the collective. And then that's it. Like after that week, I won't have that anymore, or I won't see those kinds of clients anymore, you know? So I'm really interested to see, because today I have 3 clients and it's my first 3 of the week. And it's interesting to start seeing what theme is going to start coming up, you know? But what I do is I look for that thing. I tell them what age it was created, and then I just use magnets to clear it.
Yeah, I was noticing that. That was really powerful. I mean, when you, I like the way you talk about the macro to the micro within Taoism. We talk about this bellows effect, contracting and expanding, and understanding that you let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world, because you see it from here. Everything is within, and that present moment. And how you mentioned this sort of like you get a fire sale on, hey, this week it's all about this. It's that gravitational present moment where you're, as we understand this, you know, the potential is light to wave to matter to particle, created from your attention intention in this very moment, distorting this 3D reality from what we call the mother, which is perfection. So perfection is being distorted to create what we see before us, changing the energetic potential of all things. So everything is energy. The energy has a vibration. The vibration has a frequency. And then if you resonate to that, I think it's very popular right now for manifestation, that if you obtain this resonance of the frequency, you're able to obtain whatever it is you meet, equal to or greater than within the perfection, which is the universe, and you'll create whatever you choose to. And it really does come down to that. You know, I, for many years, dealing with the spirit world and channeling, I channeled Latsu, my teacher, about 32 years ago. And he's basically my teacher from a minute to minute basis. Right now, I specifically channel him and the other 171 teachers I have within my lineage. And you access, they're like facets of the diamond. So how we would represent that is we're having a dialogue with the monologue. And finally, the monologue is the mother, the Tao, the present moment, the source. And so they're just facets of that diamond of perfection to access what in this new age spiritual terminology would be the Akashic records, the halls of Amente, however you perceive it, it's the now. And so I love that. And I mean, just the incredible tango, the dance that we're having with the amplitude of energy that's coming between us is really powerful. And it's so incredible. Which
I was thinking that too. And the people watching this, they will have that transmission come through for them.
Right. And so that potential now is all things. And so when people, you and I bring a resonance in, and I remind people that this has been going on consciously for me for 32 years. When you bring in the resonance like Frank and I do, what happens is you're altering everything and returning it back to perfection. So what happens from a dualistic perspective, which is the framework of a 3D reality, is this polarizing effect of the positive and negative aspects. Within Taoism, we don't really look at it like that. It's just yin and yang. So there's real no potential, because fear is an expression of the distortion of this reality, right? So the emotional content is what's coming out of you as the micro of the macro of the universe. You are basically filtering through the emotional content to create the present moment, but that would be a distortion within your universe. And you want to realign your universe. That's why you would come to Frank. Frank would adjust and bring you back to the mother, the potential, the perfection, and then you reset from there. That's when crazy things start happening, as you and I understand. That's the nature of reality, right?
Yeah, because you're already there, right? So like people want, like they're seeking something always, enlightenment or whatever. You are already that. You're already the highest. It's just clouded. It's clouded by so many memories and experiences from this life, from past lives, programs. So when people come to me, I'm just clearing. Okay, let's clear the fear. Let's clear this. Let's clear that. And little by little, you just become more of who you are. That's all it is. I'm not, adding anything. I'm just subtracting the things that aren't serving.
Yeah. It's as you reference the you have from week to week a potential, and it's sort of like it's a symbiotic sort of experience. So it starts with the seed of one, and then that multiplies it within Taoism. It's the 1 to the 9,000 to all things. You understand that this is happening. So that's what happens from the audience perspective for Frank. When he gets one person, all of a sudden that rippling effect then sort of like has a fire sale, and then all those people merge in on him for that particular week, and you're sort of experiencing this sort of repetitive experience. And this is what I noticed. 30 years ago, you go spirit entities who are dealing with disturbances. I specialize in all things from exorcism, house clearing, feng shui, body dowsing, teaching people how to body douse so that you can identify ley lines, power centers, all types of different energetic potential, so that that's an old school mastery that people have lost sight of, because that's where you put places of worship. You find the highest ascended point of frequency. That's where people would put their place of worship. These days it's like they're just dropping them all over the place, and they're wondering why it's so like low frequency. Have you noticed this yourself?
Oh yeah, and even not just places of worship and things, but even if I'm like launching a book or a product or something that I want to bring into the world, if I'm putting out a new video, I'll ask like my Vedic astrologer, what day do I need to do this? And it always works out. And the thing is, like, also when you see that is like we're always in cycles, and so to not even get attached to that. So for example, I have like Venus in my 8th house. This is Vedic Indian astrology, not Western. And that 8th house gets activated for me in August of this year. So the next 3 years is all Venus energy, which Venus rules my chart. It's like beauty, aesthetic, like comfort, it could be money, just whatever is like all things that are comfortable in life. So for the next 3 years, that's what begins for me starting in August. And it's like, but even it's exciting and it's nice to have that, but it's also to always remember this is just a cycle. So don't get too attached to that either. You know what I mean?
I'm really, really impressed by your observation of that, my friend, because what I remind people of, you are me, I am you, we are all things. When we are this present moment, that means that every day is a good day. Every day is an amazing day. Every moment. And that's a profound observation that you made, or a realization through your own seeking, because a lot of people get caught up. So within feng shui, I will alter all the energies so that, hey, you want to make $1 billion, you want to find your most incredible dreamer, lover, you want to have the house, the money, the whatever. That's what we call Taoist magic, and it's an infrastructure and architecture of these type of like constructs. So within Taoist magic, we're talking about manifestations that are right down to the precise last little subatomic particle, and it can be realized because we've been mastering internal alchemy for thousands of years. People have yet to, and I mean, yes, I'm a fanboy because this is what I've been doing consciously, and I've been doing it for probably 1,000 lifetimes before this. If I counted, I normally go back to 9. If I do a reading on someone, I'll give them 9 lives leading up to this very moment, and that way it gives them a great construct of what they're experiencing right now. And then we go through the energetic potential and what that is. But when you bring that up, it's like, I always tell people, if you come from biology, neurology, astrology, physiology, you are limited because you're taking one aspect of something, and then it's like almost speaking on an absolute truth. That's problematic for most people if you have an absolute. If you realize that all is now and all is nothing at the same time, everything is possible. And so that's where the potential comes in, is that present moment, and it becomes self-evident. And so, when people get that understanding, but now it's like talk the talk, walk the walk. Frank and I bring this to your attention, right? As a seeker, someone goes, well, okay, I want that. Now we need to fundamentally deconstruct the limited hurdles that you're creating to give yourself the sort of deficient experience because of your emotional content. Because I always remind people, your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And they're like, whoa, what? I didn't get that memo. Yes, this is all. And this refers back to what Frank said earlier in the conversation, which is, people perceive themselves as the identity, what they see before them, looking back at them in the mirror, as being all their flesh and blood, which is very limited in potential. And we're not asking you to dismiss or toss away your personality. That's very problematic. I want people to understand you're able to take the personality, put it aside, put it in the corner of the room, tell it to roll over and play dead, and you can be in the present moment for healing. And a lot of people say, I like chocolate, I like Netflix, I like driving my side-by-side in the desert at 100 miles an hour. That doesn't negate when I'm in the present moment to facilitate and observe an instant physical healing. And I mean, as I referred to earlier, this has been a thing that from day one, it was like a spiritual, the hit of the spiritual crack pipe. I'd never put it down, because the second I got that experience, every day I see a physical healing, and I'm not being, it's just a standard expectation. So seeing bones fuse, tumors disappear, people waking up out of comas, this is kind of normal for me. I mean, I get a lot of people going, you're that guy. I need, someone told me to call you, grandma's in a coma. And I said, don't worry, it's not going to happen. Next minute, they wake up out of the coma the next day. It's another day in the office. This is now potential, and anything is possible. And I've seen Frank's insightful clairvoyance and looking into his potential clients when he's done interviews, and you've done healings online. And it's really profound to see, because you're able to see the potential. From me, I see things with my eyes open. I see spirit entities and energies as clear as I see you. I hear their voice as clear as I hear your voice. And so I can see all that. And it's a potential of mastery. That's all. And so when you're looking into it, I can't remember which interview it was, but it was someone, and it was just beautiful to see how you were just like, they don't even realize the overhaul. They just know that they're not the same anymore. By the time you're finished conversation, they're in a whole different, because I need the audience to understand this is happening at a subatomic particle level, and it's all being altered. And I like to tell people, hey, look, you need at least 72 hours to really adjust to your new reality, because this is the potential of what's taken place on all levels. And a lot of people will do that. I have had people where they're like they have an injury, and they come and see me, and they're like, oh yes, my husband or my wife sent me here, and I've been avoiding you for years, even though you've been training with them. And then they sit down and go, so what do you want? What do you need me to do? And I'll be like, just have a conversation. What's your favorite movie? Blah, blah, blah. 10 minutes later. And they're like, okay, so now what? Enough of the small talk. I need to get this fixed. And I'm saying, it's done. And they're like, what are you talking about? It's already done. And they're like, excuse me? Get up, move your body part that you thought you couldn't move. And they're like, holy crap, it's gone.
It's so crazy that you say this, because I actually went to a friend's birthday party recently. She's a really big conscious creator. And there was a guy there who's, he says he's a hypnotist, like that's his job, I guess, but it's more like theatrical, like theatrical hypnosis. But he says on a deeper level that he does something kind of similar to what you just described. But what's interesting is that I had this person on the show named Gaia, and on my podcast twice. And we don't have to get into the whole thing, but she basically was describing how I'll start at age 38 performing miracles for people and blessings, and they'll come from all over the world. And she went back to what life that started from, and extremely specific to things that nobody would know about this life. And one of those, what happened is that I had a dream one night after she told me that I was like, someone came in for a healing and they were in a wheelchair. And instead of just like, putting my hands on them or doing the whole, whatever you would imagine a healer does, we just played a game of chess. And I don't even play chess, but in the dream we're playing chess. And then I said, okay, now she's like, same thing you just said. She was like, well, when can we do this healing? And I said, oh, you're healed. Get up and, go get me that water over there, or whatever it was. And she got up from the chair and got the water and gave it to me. But the whole thing was just us chatting and playing chess. And then I was like, okay, it's done. But I have not had that experience in real life, but it's kind of what you just described that you're doing now is what I see myself doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is something that's part of a mastery. I've kind of been doing that ever since I consciously remembered 30 years ago. But it's like, it's a progression. I teach people how to progress through. So within Taoism, we have an internal alchemy, and it starts with the physical body, energetic, spiritual body. Then it goes to the sun body, the earth body, the moon body, then finally the oneness body, the ultimate, and then being one with all things. And so you progress through this alchemical processes, and basically the blanket of it is sensory perception. You develop all those skills.
Wow.
And,
I want to come to you. I'm going to come to Vegas. Now I have a good reason to like Vegas.
Yeah. It's it's a whole different ball game when you get down with this kind of stuff. And hypnotism is an interesting entry level. I always remind people, I taught my kids that at a very young age. I've got 6 kids, and 5 of them can hypnotize people, do remote viewing, healing, all that kind of stuff. This is the stuff you need to learn. It's a nice entry level. I would never dismiss it, because it starts with the real basic of conscious and unconscious processes and shows someone what the potential is, because they can get there very quickly. They can literally get there instantaneously, and you can show someone that they can be a completely different state within a fraction of a second. So it's potential, and it's always good as an entry level to develop that skill, and that people should have that as a starting point. But what Frank and I are talking about is the potential at a spirit level, which is the highest form of manifestation. And when you alter everything at a spiritual level, it layers down within the spiritual, the emotional, the mental, and then of course the physical, which is the lowest form, which people don't seem to understand. But it takes a while to brew up this metastasized whatever the cluster of stagnation that is generating this physical limitation. And then the unraveling comes when they're in the presence of resonance, like Frank or myself, where it's able to reset and go back to that potential. I mean, when I look at your aura, I mean, you're just this ribbon of golden white light. And it's like there's angels around you that are in sort of more like an etheric sort of Greek-like attire. So there these sort of like I would say mystical angels that are of high frequency. Your aura is all, and halo is solid gold, which is
that's incredible. Thank you. That's cool to hear that. That's really amazing to hear that.
Well, you're constantly cultivating. You need to cultivate. You need to align. You need to adjust those energy centers. And if you're doing these things, and you're really, and that's where I think you've probably noticed this, and I notice this a lot, is people get involved in healing. And even if you're involved in not healing, you're a mechanic, you're a lawyer, you're a judge, you're a police officer, you work at 7-Eleven, you are selling your soul. What does that mean? It means that the energetic potential, wherever your attention, intention goes, that's where your energy flows. So that means that whatever you're doing, if you don't have a deeper nature of the energetic architecture, it's being dispersed from your physical body. So within Taoism, we have this thing we call Jing, which is the constitution you're born into, right? So when you come into the world, what happens is you have a physical potential, the hereditary genetic expression of who you are. And normally I tell people it's a battery pack, and you come in about 80% of 100. And within Taoist alchemy practices, we take you up to 100%. Then we go from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000. And then you never use your own physical potential. So we're very, very obsessed with immortality. And that means stretching out the longevity of the physical flesh within this incarnation, so that you can level up your consciousness, your spiritual consciousness, to the highest level within this lot. And so, immortality within a Taoist timeline, we have recorded people of living 150, 250, 300 years old and plus through the history of Taoist timeline. And so this is very much a normal potential when you access it. Now, from something that's more on an epigenetics level or neuroscience, we're looking at the expression of the telomeres, at what length they are, and then you're only limited by your ability to access that. And it has to be something that is palpable, not something that you're telling yourself you want to hear, but you can actually master it. And when you master it, then all bets are off. There's no limit to what you're able to create. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Do you see yourself living in the Himalayas at like a few hundred years old?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the time length for this one right now, I'm at about 163, but it continues to go up as I continue moving through my biological age.
Can you look at somebody and kind of see where they're at?
Oh yeah, I started that immediately, and I stopped it because everyone has potential, as we referred to earlier. First time I did it was a test, and I asked my teachers, I asked Letsu, why did you let me do that? Well, you need to understand the power of what that means. So I basically gave someone a timeline, and they died to the second, 2 months later.
Wow.
And I said, why was that? Why did you? And they said, look, you start with that, you see that information, yet their potential to alter that is perfection. So the present moment can be altered instantly. We do not have to be limited by so when someone gives you a psychic reading, see where it comes from, because the potential, as Frank and I have already inferred through this conversation, is you are everything. And when you truly accept that, it's not like you tell yourself what you want to hear. You actually embody it, and you're able to create that energetic potential and move things around like icons on a computer screen with that energetic potential. From a Taoist perspective, is mastering the 50 trillion cells. And when you master those 50 trillion cells, you have access to 0.07 millivolts of electricity in every cell. And so all of a sudden your potential is unlimited. And that in case is now the catalyst to everything else. So when you are engaging with this resonance, you're just bringing, these instant healings, just as you're referring to the information that your psychic reading gave you. Yes, that's exactly what's coming for you. Is think it, and from a Taoist, you think it, and it becomes reality. Magic is instant. Physical manifestation is instant. Healing is instant. So it's the now. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I just don't even want to have a conversation. I just want to hear you talk about it. Yeah.
Oh well, yeah.
Really great.
It's it is. It's so when you move from like the whole, well, you're still dealing with a lot of celebrities, right? You're dealing with a lot of people in the movie industry, or tell the audience more about that.
Yeah, not as much. I mean, a little bit of my personal life as friends and stuff, but in like my podcast and things like that, not really. I mean, my last episode last week was with Mike Posner, who's a Grammy nominated artist, has like billions of views on his songs. But I've had Shaka Khan on, but the thing is, like, I only will have a celebrity on the podcast if they are somehow related to spirituality, or they're talking about, like Shaka Khan talked about the African traditions that she came from and how she got her name and all of that, and transcendental meditation. Mike Posner on, we didn't even talk about his music. We talked about how he walked across America and how he climbed Mount Everest and what he learned from experiencing so much death around him in his life. So like, those are the conversations I want to have. Or else, like I always say, I would have stayed at Good Morning America if I wanted to interview celebrities. That's not what this podcast is. It was great. I had an amazing time talking to celebrities, and whatever other assignments I got, I would interview politicians. I would go to volcano eruptions, to war zones. I mean, I did everything. But like, I want to talk about aliens and about meditation and about levitating. Like, that's what I want to talk about.
You bring up a great point, my dear friend, because, over 30 years, witnessing spirit entities, dealing with them, whether it's from an exorcism, house clearing, whatever it might be, the potential. And the reason I bring up for the audience, and most of the OGs understand that, one of my lineages, I'm a lineage holder in one lineage of Taoism, the 66th generation lineage holder, and 126th generation lineage holder in another Taoist methodology. And within those two lineages, as an ordained priest, one was specialized in exorcism. So that was just kind of like within the Asian culture or Eastern culture, this is very normal to understand that all these potentials are here. And it's sort of like something that a Western culture needs to get used to, moving through, up and down the peninsula, dealing with Fortune 500 companies as their guru throughout, Silicon Valley. I did that for a long time. And then I kind of hung my hat up and said, I've done enough. It's time for me to be more within an experience where I can help millions of people instead of thousands. And that sort of brought me to social media about, 9-10 months ago. And before that, I was just a very, one of those, it's like that person you call, I know this guy. And so it's been really good, but now it's time to share this with the world and have everyone be returning to their true self and know who they really are. And so I completely understand what you mean when it comes to that, because you start to lose your way when you're dealing with these people, and it becomes problematic when you're looking at stuff within a celebrity sort of or affluent socialite sort of setting, instead of I want to help millions of people. So whether I was working with someone in that space that was sort of like in a place where they were like, paying me handsomely for my time, or I would rather just be in a situation where I walk in a 7-Eleven and a guy's got a back problem and it's gone before I even leave.
Well, it's interesting that it's like the celebrity thing is a distraction sometimes, just like levitating we talked about as a distraction. It's like they're both distractions in a way, because you can get caught up in like, oh, I'm helping this amazing whatever celebrity or whoever, and that becomes a distraction. But also, what's interesting that you said is like that you just got on social media 9 to 10 months ago, because this is, I feel like, the time that people like us just really want to get this information out there, which is why like I canceled every conference I was speaking at this year, every retreat, everything, just to write this book that I'm writing, because it feels really like timely now. It needs to come out now,
Yeah, it is. It's about getting to the masses. I want to help millions, and I always refer back to my teachers, and they give me the ultimate guidance, because they're facets of the mother of perfection. So they can give me insight. It's like, Lao Tzu blows my mind. Probably 90% of what comes out of my mouth is really just another transmuted version of his insight. And so, simple things like when 2024 came around, everyone was coming to Lao Tzu going, "Wow, what's going on? What's happening? Is the world going to end? Is everything?" And he's like, imagine you're like a grain of sand. Asking the beach, what are you doing today? Fall back into the beach and be realized. And I was just like, whoa, how you can't make this stuff up. And it's like, because he is a little cheeky. Now that's completely fine, but he talks more in the expressions of the universe, which you and I really resonate with. That, like that amplitude we're getting right now, that's real right there. And it's experienced by anyone observing this right now, is the now moment. And so, the insight he was talking about, we're going to be hit with sun frequency from the sun 9 times more than any time in human history this year and through next year. And now this really makes sense, because I've had people on my channel that read Schumann resonance, right?
Yes,
so the Schumann resonance
right now too. Yeah.
Right. And so basically, in a nutshell, the Earth is basically a larger version of us. We are a small version, a micro of the Earth, the universe. And so the magnetic field that we project, that is where all the information, energy, frequency is out there. This is what's going on with the Schumann resonance. Now, the Schumann resonance at a baseline is 7.83. From a brainwave perspective, which I measure brainwaves because I want to see what brainwave I get into for a healing. Now, a lot of people talk about the Stephen Hawking's consciousness scale. I don't know whether you heard of that.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm not so much sold on that as a fan, because I normally, when I do healings or channeling, my brainwaves are between 100 and 400 hertz. And so I sweat like a mofo. I look like, you could put a stick and a marshmallow on the end of the stick and cook it from the transmission of heat that's coming from my physical body. That's been going on for 30 years. That's when the juice is in. It comes down like a beam of energy through my whole physical body, and it's an expression of Lao Tzu, and it comes right now. And so that resonance is 7.83 for the audience. That means it's in a theta state, which means you're fully aware to be pliable, creative. You can access things that would be problematic within your human timeline from the conscious and unconscious process. So if a human being was to stand on planet Earth without the obstruction of their emotional content, the 783 hertz would be the circadian rhythm of the earth. And that means that you would actually, if you were embodying that, you would be a very happy human being just staying in that state. But what happens is you get that as a baseline, and then all of a sudden you have all these other disturbing timelines of your natural born life experience, that what my dear friend, a Buddhist monk, would call the dukkha, the distortion, right? And he's always, all he does is observe his distortion. He just wants to be in harmony of the universe. So that's his thing. It's like, I don't really care about the energy. I'm not a fan. I just want to observe my dukkha and just be the now. And I'm like, you go, brother. I love it. I mean, there's a million ways up the mountain. I always tell people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. And, so that resonance, what I wanted to get to was Alexis from Ascension Diaries. She reads these things, and Lao Tzu said that this is going to be an alteration of the actual frequency of the earth. So within the next 12 months, we're going to go from 7.83. And right now, there's an artificial manipulation of that frequency to a 12 to 18 hertz. And it's coming from somewhere. She can see it. I can see it. I can feel it. And it's like, so what does that mean to the audience? It means that that's high beta. That means that you as a human being standing on the earth now are being manipulated to stay in a high fear, high anxiety state, right?
Oh, right. Wow.
And so that 12 to 18 hertz will manipulate your perception of reality. And if you're not on top of it and you don't have a way of aligning yourself, it's problematic. And so then, as Lao Tzu referred to earlier in the year, the 9 times the frequency of the sun will bring the brain waves up to 40 to 60 hertz. So at a 40 hertz brainwave, that's a gamma brainwave. That means that you are 100% conscious. You envelop the conscious and unconscious process, and you can access anything instantaneously and do it now. So I've seen physical healing, bone fuse at 120 hertz, 300 hertz. So when someone talks about the Hawkins scale, it still doesn't resonate with me, because even at 963, you don't have to be at 963 to be the now. Does that make sense?
You're talking about hertz, and the consciousness scale is not hertz. That's the thing, though. Maybe that's why you're looking at it differently.
Right. Well,
so
that's what I was.
1 to 1,000, right? But not hertz. It's like a level of consciousness.
No, they talk about hertz. They talk about it's 500 hertz, 700 hertz.
I only know this level of consciousness scale.
Yeah. It's actually, they talk about it from a hertz perspective, and that's where it's problematic, because it's a baseline, and I would reference the audience back to what Frank and I had mentioned earlier, which is when you're the now moment, you're all things. You can be everything at once. And that's why people go, well, my zodiac sign is this, and I'm a monkey, I'm a rabbit, you're all of the above. So whatever that is this year, just go, it's good to be me. But you have to actually access that energetic potential. It cannot just be, I'm telling myself what I want to hear. If I look in the mirror enough times, like, De Niro going, you talking to me? Eventually you're going to believe it, right? No, that's not what Frank and I are talking about. You have to align yourself, and it will be self-evident, because you'll witness physical healing, manifestation, magic instantly in the 3D, because you're a fourth-dimensional being observing that. You could not be observing a three-dimensional experience if you weren't in the 4D. That means that you're one breath away from fifth-dimensional realization of all things. And so from a physics perspective, people can understand these degrees of development from one dimension to the next. And it seems to be helping people to sort of get a grasp of what that means for themselves, right? And so you understand the somatic syntax, co-creation, sort of like the symbiotic sort of relationship that people have with words, letters, numbers, symbols. And it comes from a deep level of perhaps maybe as simple as a timeline of the discovery of, DNA back in the 60s. And now you have, incredible, seekers and guiding people like Bruce Lipton, revealing this stuff through his own tinkering with stem cells back in the 70s. And now he's sort of having a validation realization now. And, I find it really funny because, and I don't find it funny in the way I'm laughing with people, because this is a Taoist understanding of alchemy for tens of thousands of years, for hundreds of thousands of years. And people are like, hang on a second, that sounds ridiculous. Well, I could get back a guy by the name of Michael Cremo, who's a historian, and he was on my channel, and he basically pursued the origins of the human existence. And he has documented evidence of human beings from 1 million years ago. So this idea that maybe it's only 200,000, it goes way beyond that. And so from me getting direct access to my teachers, i.e. the Yellow Emperor, who's one of my teachers that I channel on a day-to-day basis, he was the guy who created the infrastructure of Chinese culture as you know it today. It started with the seed of the Yellow Emperor coming down on a celestial dragon, and he laid magnetized to the earth for 18 days and nights as he downloaded the code for the Chinese culture through the whispers of the universe. And that, you can hear that, you can feel that somatic, visceral feeling that Frank and I are having is, that's true. I don't need to read in a book. I can expand from that. And that's what this is all about. It's like the expanding and contracting, knowing when you are in the presence of the truth. And that's all it comes down to. It's like, well, what does that mean to you? And then the more you attune yourself, the physicality perspective, like where people go, I lead with my head, it works 20% of the time. I feel with my heart, it's a 50-50. I get a gut feeling, it maybe works 60% of the time. When you align what we call the Dantians from a Taoist perspective, which is called the energy field, we work on the internal alchemy, which is Nidan, and then we expand that Nidan from the Nigong, which is internal power. And so then you align this stuff, and head, heart, and gut is 100%. When you get a gut feeling, it's 100% accurate, but you have to align the energies. And I think that's really what's so important about it, experiencing it through Frank, is that's exactly what he does. It's like you can just be in the presence of him, and he will realign you and return you to remember who you really are. And that's what we need as a self-evident. I mean, I always coin, if you had to have a Taoist seeker, and what would parallel that would be like a Gnostic path of realization. It's self-evident. The highest consciousness is being able to access direct source information, channel directly. And that's what we do. That's how you do it. So it's like, it's always part of, it's not being distorted by someone else's perception. What's most important for me is teaching people how to master these practices and then implementing themselves and having a self-evident realization as the present moment, so that they can now take it on. They can create the physical healing. They can teach people clairvoyance. They can do all these things. And it's just a matter of method. If you have a method, you will be realized. None of the things that Frank and I speak of are unobtainable for somebody that can have a method. And that's why people are lured to Taoism, like internal alchemy, because we are second to none for that. And I mean, that's sort of self-evident with a lot of things all across the board, whether it's a Vedic, Hindu, Buddhism, Rosicrucian, Kemetic, Hermetic principles. The alchemy still is nothing compared to that. And yes, I'm a bit of a fanboy, and I get it, guys. But it's like, I want to show you. I want you to understand your potential and return to the now, so that you have this moment as a now, not like a Steve Jobs moment where he was like, the last words were, oh my goodness, it's much brighter than I thought it was. We can have it now. We don't have to wait till we're transitioning, even though that's such a beautiful thing to witness. And I've done that many times in throughout the last 30 years, probably dozens, if not over 100 to 200, like transitions of people. And it's part of the experience. It's part of what we do. And it's a beautiful thing as you watch the energy sort of like have a little dance through the energetic like infrastructure as it leaves the physical flesh. It's really powerful stuff. And then you start to realize death is not even on the menu. It doesn't exist from your true consciousness. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up on that, and they stay in their fear. And I always remind people, if you're fearful, you're suggestible. If you're emotional, you're suggestible, and that's when you're unconscious. And people are like, what? You're unconscious when you're emotional. You don't realize that, oh, no, but I'm angry. I know I don't like this person. I hate them. Well, that's the first red flag and telltale sign that you are not even in control of the ship right now. And that's the big manipulation that most people have. They kind of get, oh,
reactive. Yeah.
I did, right?
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is, if you die before you die, you won't die when you die. One of my favorites.
And that right there reminds us, when we refer to, when you accept that you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. And so that's where we always go, well, if you remind the man mortality is real, you can start getting down with the get down and realize that the physical flesh is something that you use as an anchor for this conscious experience. And so you want to cultivate that and nurture that as much as possible. A lot of methods are not so concerned by that. From a Buddhist path to Buddhist own confession, they're not so concerned about the physical flesh. They're like, it's like an avatar, toss it on and off. And I get that, and we know that. Frank and I understand that. Yet you want to level up now. The point that you're having as an ambassador to planet Earth, and that's what your expression of consciousness is, having this physical avatar, is that. And so a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? It means that you're in service to others. You're selfless. And people are like, what? But right now I just want to get my energetic potential down. I'm like, if you're in service to others and you're selfless, that means you don't have to think about things. You just serve others, serve humanity. Guess what that means? What does that mean? It means that you're in service to yourself. Because you are me and I am you. And they're like, oh, when you share it with me that way, sign me up. I'm there. Well, it happens without, it's not a manipulation. A lot of people will come to me like, oh, I've got this person in need. I've got this housekeeper whose mother's dying in Mexico, and I want to give her $5,000 and tell her to go. Why are you asking me? And they're like, well, I need you to give me guidance on what to do. No, you don't. You're here to justify how you want to manipulate this poor woman by giving her some money to help her out and have her work for you for the next 10 years. No. If you want to give her that money, you give it to her. You know you have the resources. Stop asking these type of infantile questions. And they're like, oh, you're a little stern. I'm like, this is where my favorite TV show host, and this is why my students are like, you have a personality, Jifu. I'm like, yes. My favorite TV host is Judge Judy, and her response is this: don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, sir. This is what happens, right? This victimhood that people get into, which is part of the human condition, right? This limited expression of your journey and how you perceive things. It's not reality. It's not real. Reality is this present moment. Nothing more, nothing less. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious about when you mentioned the Schumann resonance and it being manipulated. Do you think that people are consciously able to choose, or they are unconsciously maybe choosing which one they're resonating with, this higher new frequency or the one being manipulated?
Well, yeah. What's happening is, that's why I find the fundamentals of hypnosis is always good to understand that, because you can, most people will lean on things that I find a little problematic. I'm not a fan of things like NLP, where for the audience, that means neuro-linguistic programming, where people sort of manipulate you through linguistics. And this is part of an energy center of your genetic potential, because it's embedded deep within the DNA, words, letters, numbers, symbols. So when you use linguistics, you can instantly manipulate people. That's why you look at politicians and they have a pace. It's what we call pacing and leading. If you're a hypnotist or a psychiatrist, they would refer to this as a pacing and leading process. So there's a rhythm that goes on. So when you listen to a politician, they'll be, I would like to talk to you today about the condition of the world. And you're like, whoa, this
Hmm.
guy is literally, and what happens is the observer just falls deep into their unconscious, and then they're opening the gateways to what we call the theta realm. And so instantly people are pouring into your unconscious whatever you want. So if you're emotionally fearful while listening to this, all that nonsense will pour into your unconscious and then program you to perceive things a certain way. So yes, when people are being altered by this, if you're able to cultivate consciously, you can choose the higher frequency that goes beyond the beta. Beta is up to under 40 hertz. So between probably 8 to 10 hertz and above, between 8 to 10 and 40, I think it's 37, is a high beta. That means that, you imagine you wake up, you're highly strung out. That's what happens. Your brain splices
Like
off some
survival, right? Survival
right?
mode. Yeah.
And you're in survival mode, and that becomes problematic for the user that's already emotionally stressed out. And then you add a couple of cups of coffee, you had a bad day at the office, you're just wired to be myopic and overly focused on one thing that becomes the rat in the wheel. And then, of course, people will manipulate you. And this is the issue that I have with things that are used like NLP and things of that nature, because that's how people use it. They're not looking to help people. Like, Tony Robbins, like, I want to help you change your life. No, when people learn these type of techniques, they're like, I want to manipulate you. How can I manipulate you the easiest way possible? So referring to the Schumann resonance is there's something out there that is altering the actual resonance of the earth that's bringing people into this high beta, and they're staying there. So they're highly anxious, and you'll see it around your surroundings.
I hear conversations when I'm out on the street or at the gym, and I just hear people talking about politics or something, and they're just so wired up. I'm like, wow, they're just really focused on this thing.
And it becomes problematic because now they're suggestible. That means that, and I do this with my kids. Sometimes we'll go down to the Strip and have a family day, and everyone's out in Vegas to have fun. So you go walking on the Strip and you'll find a group of people that are like, I'm just partying, I'm having a good time. And you'll be like, would you like to experience bliss immediately? And they're like, well, absolutely. And their friend will get their camera out. And, I've already entered that resonance, and they don't realize the energetic profile. So they're like, the second they go, yes, I go sleep, and they go out standing up, and their friend are like, oh, what's going on? I asked them, and they said they want to. And they're like, oh my goodness. Now, and for the audience, I go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to erase their name. I'm going to be Justin Bieber. I'll take their wallet and keys while you're videotaping this, and then I'll wake them up. And then wake them up, and they're like, okay, what's your name? And they're like, And their friends are like, oh, I can't believe this. And then I'll be like, are you missing something? And I'll wave this in front of their face, and they're like, I think, where are my keys in my wallet? And I'm like, really? You don't see it? And their friends are like, oh, what's going on? This is crazy. And then I'll just, through inferring, you switch another switch on within that consciousness, and they turn to me and go, oh, it's Justin Bieber. Can I get a photo? And you realize that this is how quickly you can be altered. And that's for anybody. There is anyone that's a human being that has a nervous system can instantly access this level of consciousness as a baseline. People need to understand how quickly this happens. And you should always get a fundamental of that. A lot of people dismiss hypnosis. I think it's a great entry level for anyone to get a little understanding of things. But this is how quickly you can be manipulated. And so people need to realize, holy crap, I can literally go from a zero to a hero in a fraction of a second. Oh, absolutely. And now you need to understand the energetic potential, and you need to cultivate it through the Taoist practices I teach people. So now you can transmute it into physical healing, manifestation, in deep levels of energetic magic. And so, that comes in all forms within Taoist sex magic, whatever. There's a lot of things that are misdirections that people seem to they dismiss. So there's things to Kundalini as a baseline from a Hindu practices. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with Kundalini,
Oh
but
yeah, I think so.
Kundalini is an incredible energetic potential, but a lot of people, I've traveled the world training with people, teaching, training other people. I've only ever witnessed 2 people that have had a true Kundalini awakening, because a lot of people are like, well, I've had a Kundalini awakening. I'm like, I'm absolutely 100% sure that you've had an energetic awakening. Whether it's Kundalini, that is to be determined, right? Because there's a mastery that comes with that Kundalini awakening, where things I teach people, like stopping your heart, levitating, all that kind of stuff. These are the things that come out of the potential. Now, as Frank and I had mentioned before, there are also distractions, because yes, you master that, but what does that do for raising the conscious collective? It's like, okay, you need to, for your own validation, experience something that you would consider supernatural. Like, for example, sometimes I'll just envelop my forearm in like anesthesia, run a rod through my arm, pull it out, and you won't see an exit or entry point, because this is just energetic potential. But then you go, holy moly, I didn't know that was possible. And that's a part of the present moment. And this is all these types of things. When you look at physical healing, and I remember you mentioned spoon bending, because that's one of the things I love teaching people too, because what happens is, with the physical flesh, you see the flesh mutate in front of your very eyes, and it'll reset itself back to its original state. What do I mention that for? Because it's a very similar profile to when you bend spoons. So when you're able to bend a spoon initially, there's 3 levels I teach people at. First is you get the tactile resistance of a spoon, then you put your intention to the center, and it will bend like butter. It'll just melt. And then the next level is you hold the spoon, you melt it like a candle. And then the third one is you hold a fork and you bend the prongs in either direction using your intention. This is that potential. But once you understand and master that potential, that goes with physical flesh also. There's no exception. But you must be that present moment, and it becomes problematic if you're like, well, it's about spoon bending. I can't possibly think of it as a physical flesh. And this is where people become separated. And so part of the separation comes from the spiritual consciousness. Like The Secret, I feel like, was a little disappointing for a lot of people, because they read it and they're like, it didn't work for me, because they asked you one fundamental question that separated you. And they're like, what are your values? Now, if you want to witness healing, it's a present moment. That means it has no place, person, or thing, no title. I cannot be, from me, like, for example, just yesterday, one of my kids, ate the dirt, got up, they had a lip the size of a football. And as it happened, I just went heal, 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 heal. And it shrunk and disappeared before their very eyes in seconds, because that's how you access it. I'm not going, oh my goodness, it's my kid. Oh, are you okay? Is everything all right? No, you have to be the now. You cannot have an opinion on anything. You cannot be, I am the Messiah, the next coming of Jesus. I am the healer. And that's where a lot of people get into. I need to get into the lotus position. I need to wrap myself in protection. I've got to call in my guides. These are all things of developmental skills. But in reality, when you access the present moment, none of that is it's part of a progression. I'm not going to dismiss it, because it's very important to develop skills. But you will get to a certain point as a seeker to realize that the present moment is the now, and you are me, I am you, we're all things. That's how it happens. Is that how you see things?
Yeah, but I do also see myself in the developmental stage. I still have like certain techniques and skills that I'm using and relying on, for sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, out of the seeker's journey, I never ever dismiss wherever you're at. We just we fuel you up with the nitro, just like out of Fast and Furious. The Buster. It's
Yeah.
like, you gave the Buster my beer. The Buster kept me out of handcuffs. I love that scene out of the movie. People
So good. I don't remember that scene. But
it's like, Jifu, you've got a personality. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And it's fun. But
Well, I
that's
wanna hang out and yeah, visit Vegas at some point and see all this and experience it and learn how to work with it as well.
I would love that. I invite you, my friend. I really appreciate you spending time here today. I know that you're on a tight schedule.
Yeah.
So
Part one.
part one, and we will revisit this, and we'll have you for part two, and get you back on the channel, because I've really
Yeah, and I'd love to have you on mine and maybe document some of the stuff you're doing. I mean, I'd like to experience it first and kind of see, you know, what's possible. I always do it in a way with any of the videos on my channel too, where I like to just explore, learn, and then little by little, as I'm doing it, I start to realize, is this a video? Is it not? Is this something that's demonstratable? You know what I mean? So I'm excited
yes.
to just kind of experience a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. We'll exchange. I'll give you my cell phone after this podcast. So in closing, I want to put all your social media under this podcast. I want people to go out, my students, the OGs of the channel, the subscribers, go out and check out Frank on his platform and what he's offering to the world of conscious creation. And you had already mentioned that you've got a 4-month wait list. Is there anything that they could potentially start with if they're looking to find things from you on your platforms that they could get started with, that you're sharing with them today?
You know, just like the easiest and the free thing would be like the podcast, probably, you know, quite frankly, podcast, my YouTube channel. And then they can just kind of start to explore and see what resonates for them. And it's always, you know, if they book a session with me, it's always divine timing. It always works out. It's always, you're like, oh, I get it now, why it happened at this moment, you know?
Yeah. I love it, brother. Okay. In closing, I'm just ask you one question. Yeah. What is your definition of consciousness?
Ooh, that infinite space from which all things arise.
Amen to that, brother. I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it, because I've done hundreds of these podcasts, and I welcome every one of them, and it's really amazing. Never heard the same answer as I should. You know, I mean, you know, it's my marathon is the marathon podcast for me was 7.5 hours. And that you know, but you get into conversation, you just get lost. And that was with an incredible scholar from Ireland, James Tooney, who's an incredible, insightful master at all things conscious. Well, we call it spiritual consciousness. And you know, then of course we get down to a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell, who's
I've met him actually. I met him in Germany.
Ah, yeah.
It was in one of my third eye videos. He was in the same course that I was in, but I didn't document him. I didn't really share his journey, but he was in that class with me. So I don't know anything about his work. I never looked him up or anything, but I remember meeting him. And someone else in the class was telling me who he was, but I had not heard of him.
Yeah, he's basically the OG that worked with a guy named Bob Monroe to create the Monroe Institute, that specialized in OBEs, out-of-body experience, astral projection. So he's been doing that for about 60 years. And then he created a program for the government from that, which is called the Gateway tapes and a whole heap of other things.
Oh, I've heard of the Gateway tapes. I've actually done them before.
Yeah. You know, it's always a good level. It's an entry level, a little near NDE, a little OBE, a little sleep paralysis, get a little sprinkle of that fairy dust, get it all magical, because you need an entry level. You got to get somewhere. And but you start to master the ability of the now. And I always refer to the Taoist model. You can access all dimensions at once now, instead of like I need to be here, I got to be here, I got to be here, I got to be here. No, it's all happening right now. And Tom's a dear friend, and you know, ours went for about 3.5 hours, and then we realized, hey, we have wives, we need to make sure that we stay married. So it's like, okay. So I'm welcoming part 2, my dear friend, and I feel like we just remembered who we were in past lives. Our friendship, just as if it was never lost, has been created today. So I want to thank you, brother, for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you in the next one, guys.